The Athalorian Empire was vast, stretching across 100 planets, and controlled by a race of beings known for their advanced technology and ruthless rule. Their ships were the size of small moons, their weapons could reduce cities to dust, and their leaders believed their empire was invincible. The Xalorians had conquered countless civilizations, turning them into either servants or dust in their wake. To them, Earth was just another small, primitive world, far from the reach of their mighty empire. One day, the Emperor, Vaxar the Terrible, decided it was time to expand. His empire was already powerful, but there was something about Earth that intrigued him. Perhaps it was the fact that Earth had remained free from the influence of other empires, or maybe it was simply the thought of crushing a world so young and so unprepared. Whatever the reason, the Emperor sent his most trusted ambassador, Zorak, to deliver the message to Earth's leaders: submit to the Empire or face complete destruction. Zorak's ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. Its sleek, metallic surface reflected the sunlight as it hovered over the planet like a shadow. The human governments panicked. They had never seen anything like it. The ambassador sent out a transmission, demanding to speak with the leaders of the world. His message was clear, and the tone left no room for negotiation. "We come from the Xalorian Empire." Zorak's voice boomed through the transmission. "You will surrender to us, or your world will be turned to ashes. Your choice is simple. Kneel before us, and your people will join the galaxy's greatest civilization. Refuse, and we will destroy everything you hold dear." Earth's leaders gathered in an emergency meeting, and the debate was fierce. Some argued that surrendering was the only way to save their people. After all, the Xalorians were far stronger. Earth's weapons were nothing compared to the Empire's vast fleets and advanced technology. But others refused to accept such a humiliating offer. "We will never kneel to anyone," they said, "not even to the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Among the opposition was General Sarah Bennett, a military leader who had spent years studying alien civilizations. She believed that Earth's greatest strength lay not in its weapons, but in its spirit. Humans had survived through countless challenges, wars, natural disasters, and even pandemics. Sarah knew that if humanity united, they could fight back, no matter how impossible the task seemed. "We may not have their technology," she said to her fellow leaders, "but we have something far stronger: our will to survive. We will not bow down. We will fight." Meanwhile, the Talorians grew impatient. Zorak sent another transmission, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This is your final warning, Earth. Surrender now or face the consequences." But still, humanity refused to yield. They had faced many dangers throughout their history, and while they had never encountered anything like the Xalorian Empire, they would not be cowed. Earth's leaders sent out their own message to the Empire. It was brief, direct, and defiant. "Earth will never kneel," the message said. "We will fight for our freedom." The Xalorians were not used to such resistance. Their empire was built on fear and power. For centuries, they had crushed civilizations without a second thought. But Earth's response was different. It was a spark, a refusal to be silenced. And Zorak, the Empire's ambassador, could not understand it. In his mind, this was a lost cause, a world too primitive to know its place. Still, he had his orders. If Earth would not bow, they would have to be taught a lesson. The Xalorian fleets prepared for war. Ships of enormous size began to gather at the edge of the solar system, each one armed with weapons capable of wiping entire cities off the map. The Emperor did not believe that Earth could put up much of a fight, but he wanted to make an example of them. After all, if Earth could resist, what would stop other worlds from following suit? The Empire's grip on the galaxy could slip, and the Emperor would not allow that to happen. Back on Earth, the people were divided, but many were ready to rise. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders worked together, planning the defense of their world. They knew the odds were slim, but the spirit of humanity was more powerful than ever. The resistance was growing, and the Earth's citizens began to believe that they had a chance. The fight for survival had begun. And so, the stage was set for the greatest battle humanity would ever face. The Xalorian Empire thought Earth would kneel before its power, but they had underestimated the one thing the humans possessed in greater abundance than any other species: their will to fight, to survive, and to never give in. Earth's leaders had made their choice. They would not kneel, but the cost of defiance would be high. The Xalorian fleet, with its overwhelming firepower, was already on its way. It was only a matter of time before the first strike came. As humanity braced for impact, there was an undercurrent of determination that flowed beneath the surface. People everywhere were preparing in their own ways, gathering supplies, reinforcing their cities, and above all, readying their hearts for the battle ahead. In the United States, General Sarah Bennett knew the situation was dire, but she also knew that Earth's greatest asset wasn't its weapons or technology. It was its people. For years, humanity had faced natural disasters, wars, and disease, and each time they had come out stronger. Now this same spirit of resilience would fuel their resistance. General Bennett met with top military commanders from around the world, forming a coalition. The leaders of China, Russia, the European Union, and other nations came together, setting aside their differences to focus on the one thing that mattered: survival. It wasn't just a matter of military power anymore. It was about unity. If humanity could stand together, they would have a fighting chance. Divide and conquer. That's the Xalorian way, General Bennett said during a strategy meeting. If we don't unite, we'll fall apart, one piece at a time. Her words struck a chord with the room. They couldn't afford division. They needed to be one force, one mind, ready to face the unimaginable. They had no illusions about their chances, but the human spirit had always found a way, even in the darkest of times. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Earth's major cities, a different kind of resistance was growing, one that operated outside the governments and military. These were the ordinary people, the workers, the students, the engineers, and the hackers. They knew they couldn't stand against the Xalorian fleet head-on, but they were resourceful. The human mind, after all, was capable of incredible feats of invention and ingenuity. In basements and hidden laboratories, teams of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, creating weapons from the wreckage of old military technology. They repurposed satellite systems to intercept Xalorian communications. They built makeshift drones and missile systems from scavenged parts. It wasn't enough to defeat the Xalorians, but it was enough to fight back. Sarah Bennett had been hearing whispers about these underground efforts, and though they were small, they gave her hope. Earth's people weren't waiting to be saved. They were taking action, each in their own way. As the Xalorian ships entered Earth's solar system, the people of Earth had one last chance to prepare. They could see the massive warships in the sky, looming like dark giants. The first attacks came quickly. The Xalorians sent drones to strike Earth's military bases, launching precision missiles to wipe out strategic targets. But despite the destruction, humanity held on. The world's leaders didn't cower. Instead, they ordered a counterattack. It wasn't much, but it was a statement. Earth had fought back. The Xalorians, surprised by the human response, prepared for a full-scale invasion. Zorak, the Empire's ambassador, reported back to the Emperor, who was growing increasingly impatient. "They have dared to resist," Zorak said. "They are not as weak as we thought." The Emperor frowned, his mind already calculating how to deal with Earth. "Crush them," he commanded. "Leave nothing but ashes. Show them the cost of defiance." As Earth's leaders met to discuss the next steps, they knew the fight had only just begun. But something had shifted in the air. The humans weren't afraid anymore. They had realized something. The Xalorians might have more ships, more weapons, but they didn't understand humanity's greatest strength: their ability to rise after every defeat, to keep fighting no matter the odds. "We can't stop them all," Sarah Bennett said to her fellow commanders. But we can make them pay for every inch they take. We can slow them down, and we can show them that Earth will not be conquered. At that moment, the plan to defend Earth shifted. No longer would humanity be on the defensive, hoping to survive. Now they would fight with everything they had, using every advantage they could find. They would strike back where the Xalorians least expected it, in the heart of their operations. One by one, nations began to launch guerrilla attacks against the Empire's supply ships and smaller fleets. Small groups of resistance fighters, including civilians, took to the skies in stolen Xalorian crafts, learning how to pilot them and strike against the Empire's forces. It was chaotic, disorganized, but it was a start. As the Xalorians launched another round of brutal bombardments against Earth's cities, the resistance fighters had already begun their work. Communications were intercepted, supplies sabotaged, and the Empire's forces found themselves under constant attack, unable to stay in control for long. Earth was fighting back, and the Xalorians were beginning to realize just how hard it was going to be to break this world. The silent rebellion had become loud, and now the Xalorians had to face the full force of humanity's will. The war was far from over, but something extraordinary had begun to happen. Earth's resistance was no longer just a handful of brave souls fighting against a mighty empire. It had grown into a force, a movement that spread across the globe. Cities that had once been symbols of fear and destruction were now strongholds of hope. People were no longer just waiting for their governments to act. They were taking the fight to the Empire themselves. General Sarah Bennett stood in a small command center, surrounded by maps and communication screens. The Xalorians had launched their most devastating attack yet, and entire regions had been decimated by orbital bombardments. Yet, despite the destruction, Earth's people refused to surrender. They had learned something in the last few months. They might be outmatched in technology, but they were far from outclassed in courage. "It's time to take the fight to them," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with determination. Her team nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The first few skirmishes had been small, mostly guerrilla strikes, but now it was time for something bigger. They couldn't wait for the Empire to make their next move. They had to hit the Xalorians where it would hurt most. Sarah's plan was simple: disrupt the Empire's supply lines and cripple their communication networks. It was the perfect way to slow down the enemy's advance without directly facing their overwhelming military might. By cutting off their supplies, they would force the Xalorians into a position where they couldn't easily replace their losses. It was risky. If they failed, the Empire would come down even harder on Earth. But Sarah knew that the longer they waited, the more it would cost. Humanity had to show the Empire that they couldn't be crushed with a single blow. Elsewhere, small groups of resistance fighters were already working on the plan. A mix of soldiers, engineers, and civilians who had never picked up a weapon before were now crafting bombs, hacking into alien technology, and sabotaging the Empire's infrastructure. The humans were quick learners, their resourcefulness quickly turning the tide in their favor. In the heart of one of Earth's most advanced cities, a young engineer named Leo was part of a team tasked with hacking into a captured Xalorian communications satellite. It was dangerous work, and the Empire's response time was swift. But Leo and his team had managed to slip past the Empire's security and gain control of the satellite. "The data's coming in," Leo said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He was scanning for weaknesses, looking for vulnerabilities in the Empire's communication system. If they could disrupt the flow of information, the Xalorians would be blind. His screen flickered for a moment as a notification popped up. A fleet of Xalorian warships was nearing the solar system's outer edge. The attack was imminent. "Got it," Leo muttered, a smile of triumph on his face. He hit a key, and the satellite's control shifted. The Empire's fleet would now be unable to communicate with each other or their homeworld. The timing couldn't have been better. Within minutes, the news spread across Earth. The Xalorian fleet was in disarray, struggling to coordinate their forces. This small victory proved that Earth's people were capable of much more than the Empire had ever anticipated. The spark of defiance had ignited into a blazing fire. Back in the command center, General Bennett received the report, and a sense of pride washed over her. "This is just the beginning," she said. The resistance had made its first real move, and the Empire was now on the defensive. Earth's unity had turned into a weapon, and every strike against the Empire sent a clear message: Earth would never bow. However, not all of the Silurian Empire was caught off guard. Zorak, the Empire's ambassador, had been growing impatient with the humans' resistance. "They are learning faster than we expected," he reported to Emperor Vaxar. "We must act quickly before their forces become too organized." Emperor Vaxar's eyes narrowed in fury. "If they think this is a fight, they will see true power. Deploy the fleet to Earth's core. It's time to show them the price of defiance." As the Silurians prepared their next move, the humans weren't about to rest on their small victories. The momentum was shifting, and there was no turning back. The resistance had become a force to be reckoned with. The people of Earth now knew they had a chance to win. They might be small compared to the Empire, but they were clever, united, and fiercely determined. For every ship the Silurians launched, there were hundreds of resistance fighters ready to take action. For every bomb the Empire dropped, there were thousands of humans building, learning, and fighting back. In the middle of this chaos, Captain Rhea Adams, one of the most skilled soldiers in the resistance, made her presence known. She had led successful strikes against the Silurians, and her team had become a symbol of hope for the people. Rhea had seen too many of her comrades fall in battle, but each loss only made her more determined to stop the Empire. "We are not just fighting for survival," Rhea said to her team, her voice low but full of resolve. "We're fighting for our future, and we will win this fight." The spark of defiance had become a fire, and now it was unstoppable. As Earth's resistance continued to grow, so did its courage. The recent victories against the Silurian Empire had shown humanity that they could stand up to the overwhelming power of the Empire, but the fight was far from over. The Silurians had regrouped after their initial setbacks, and they were more determined than ever to crush the human spirit. But the people of Earth had become something the Empire had never expected: a united force that refused to back down. General Sarah Bennett had become the face of Earth's military leadership. Her experience, combined with her unwavering belief in humanity, made her a natural leader. The coalition of Earth's nations had started to work together more closely, setting aside their old rivalries in the face of a common enemy. China, Russia, the United States, and the European Union, each nation brought its own strengths to the table. The humans were learning to operate as one, and it was paying off. Bennett stood in a war room, where the world's military leaders had gathered to discuss their next move. The room was filled with maps, holographic displays, and the hum of quiet conversations. There was a sense of urgency in the air, but also an unusual sense of hope. The resistance had hit the Silurians hard, and now it was time to press that advantage. "We've weakened their supply lines," Bennett began, her voice steady but filled with determination. "But the Empire is still vast. We need to hit them where it hurts the most, by targeting their command centers." Earth's military had acquired valuable intelligence, and the most important discovery was a secret fleet of Silurian warships stationed just beyond the edge of the solar system. If the humans could strike these ships before they could reinforce the Empire's main forces, it would cripple the Silurian command structure. The human resistance needed to act quickly. But it wasn't just the military that was growing stronger. The civilian resistance, led by engineers, scientists, and hackers, had made incredible strides. People who had never fought before were now a vital part of the struggle. They had figured out how to repair Silurian technology, reverse engineer their weapons, and even create new devices to fight back. One of the most significant achievements was a fleet of stolen Silurian drones that the humans had repurposed. These drones had been fitted with Earth-made weapons and were now a key part of the Resistance's tactics. One such success was the work of Leo, the young engineer who had helped. Meanwhile, Captain Rhea Adams and her team had been leading the charge on the ground, carrying out covert missions to sabotage Thalorian installations and disrupt their plans. Rhea's team had become legendary, and her name was now known throughout Earth. Her leadership and bravery had inspired countless others to join the fight. Rhea had seen the worst of the war. She had lost friends, watched cities burn, and witnessed the true cost of this battle. But she had never lost sight of what they were fighting for: freedom. One of Rhea's most trusted allies was Marco, a former civilian who had volunteered to fight after his home was destroyed by Xalorian bombardment. Marco had been part of the first wave of guerrilla fighters, and now he had become a skilled soldier, guiding others in the art of resistance. Marco's heart burned with the desire for revenge, but his loyalty to Rhea and the cause kept him focused. He knew that revenge alone wouldn't win the war. It was unity and strategy that would turn the tide. As Rhea and Marco prepared for their next mission, the news came through that the Xalorians were preparing for another massive attack. The Empire, frustrated by their earlier setbacks, was planning to strike directly at Earth's heart. They would send their full fleet to crush the resistance once and for all. "We need to stop them before they can get here," Rhea said, her voice sharp and filled with purpose. "We can't let them regroup." The Resistance's plan was bold. They would use In the vastness of space, the Xalorian fleet loomed closer. Zorak, the Empire's ambassador, stood at the command center of the lead ship, his eyes cold as he watched Earth's preparations unfold. The humans were resourceful, that much was clear. But the Empire had dealt with rebels before. Their strategy was simple: crush everything in their path. "They think they can stand against us," Zorak muttered. "They will learn how wrong they are." With a single command, the Xalorian fleet launched a series of attack drones, descending on Earth's atmosphere with the precision of a practiced strike. Their goal was clear: destroy Earth's defenses and pave the way for the full invasion force. But they hadn't anticipated the scale of the Resistance's response. As the first Xalorian drones entered the atmosphere, Earth's shield disruptors activated. The sky crackled with energy as the Xalorian ships were temporarily rendered vulnerable. For a few brief moments, they were powerless, and the humans seized the opportunity. Now, General Bennett's voice rang out, and the world's forces launched their counterattack. From Earth's surface, rockets soared toward the enemy fleet, striking their ships with precision. Xalorian warships began to fall from the sky, their once impenetrable shields now useless. It was a sight unlike any the Empire had ever seen. Humanity was fighting back, and they were winning. In space, the Resistance fighters were relentless. Rhea and Marco led a squadron of repurposed Xalorian drones into the heart of the fleet. Each drone was equipped with Earth-made weapons, turning them into powerful tools of destruction. As they weaved through the Xalorian forces, they fired at will, taking down ship after ship. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos humanity knew how to control. "The fleet's in disarray," Rhea said, her voice tight with determination. "Keep pushing." Despite the chaos, the Xalorians quickly regrouped. They weren't going to be defeated that easily. Their remaining ships began to fire back, but Earth's resistance had already taken the upper hand. The Xalorian fleet was starting to break apart, and the humans could feel the shift in momentum. On the ground, the battle raged on. Cities were still under threat from Xalorian drones, but the resistance had the advantage. Earth's people were no longer just defending. They were fighting to win. Streets that had once been filled with fear were now the sites of fierce, determined battles. Civilians and soldiers fought side by side, turning the tide in their favor. Sarah Bennett watched the battlefield unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. "We're doing it," she whispered to herself. "We're really doing it." The Xalorian fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, was crumbling under the weight of Earth's resolve. And with each passing minute, the humans gained more ground. But the battle wasn't over yet. Zorak knew the war wasn't won in a single strike. His fleet was crumbling, but there was still a chance for a counterattack. The humans had pushed the Xalorians back, but the true test would come in the final moments. "We're not finished yet," Zorak growled. "We will show them the true might of the Empire." But no matter how many times the Empire regrouped, Earth had something the Xalorians could never understand. A spirit that refused to break. The fight was far from over, but the Resistance knew one thing for certain. Earth would never kneel. The battle had raged for hours, and Earth's forces were gaining ground. But the Xalorian Empire was not one to give up easily. The fleet, though battered, had not been entirely destroyed. Their flagship, the Zarathos, still stood at the heart of the Empire's forces, a symbol of their power and determination to finish the job. General Sarah Bennett stood at the command center, her face grim. The humans had fought well, but the Xalorians were far from defeated. While the fleet had been thrown into chaos, the Empire still had its most powerful weapon, the Zarathos. If that ship wasn't neutralized, the war would continue, and Earth's survival would remain uncertain. "We've made great progress," Sarah said, her voice steady but full of urgency. "But the Zarathos is still operational. We need to take it down before it can regroup and strike back." Around her, the military leaders nodded in agreement. The Empire's flagship was heavily armored, its weapons capable of devastating anything in its path. It would take a well-coordinated, daring strike to bring it down. But the humans had something the Empire didn't: determination. "We've already hit their communications," Sarah continued, her mind racing through the options. "Now we go after their heart. We need a team on the ground to infiltrate their command center." As Sarah and her team worked to develop a plan, Captain Rhea Adams stood with her squad, preparing for another dangerous mission. This time, it wasn't just about fighting in space. It was about taking the fight to the heart of the Xalorian war effort, the flagship, Zarathos. Rhea was used to difficult missions. She had led countless strikes against the Empire's forces, and each one had been more dangerous than the last. But this mission felt different. This was the final push. If they could take out the Zarathos, it would cripple the Empire and turn the tide of the war in humanity's favor. "We don't have much time," Rhea said, addressing her team. "We're going straight into the heart of their fleet. We'll board the Zarathos, disable their command systems, and take out their main weapons. Once we do that, the fleet will fall apart." Marco, her trusted second-in-command, gave a sharp nod. He was ready for anything. He had been fighting for his home, his family, and his future ever since the Empire had arrived. He would see it through to the end. "We'll make them regret underestimating us," Marco said, a fierce determination in his eyes. The team quickly boarded their specially modified shuttle, designed to avoid detection by Xalorian sensors. They flew under the radar, weaving through the chaos of the battle. Outside the shuttle's window, Rhea could see Xalorian warships in flames, their once impressive shields no longer a match for Earth's ingenuity. But the Zarathos was still looming large, an indomitable fortress in the sky. The Resistance fighters were well aware of the risks. If they failed, Earth would be vulnerable to another full-scale invasion. They had to succeed. There was no other choice. Inside the Zarathos, the atmosphere was tense. Zorak, the Xalorian commander, watched from his command bridge as his fleet continued to take hits. He knew this was their last chance to turn things around. His forces had been beaten back, but the Zarathos remained intact. It was their last hope, their last weapon. "I will not let these humans defeat us," Zorak muttered under his breath. "We will show them that no one can stand against the might of the Empire." He turned to his officers. "Prepare for the final assault. We will strike at Earth's heart and wipe them out once and for all." But Zorak was unaware of the human strike team heading straight for the heart of his ship. The Resistance had learned how to fight smarter, not just harder. Their knowledge of the Xalorian technology, their teamwork, and their sheer will to survive had made them an unstoppable force. The shuttle carrying Rhea and her team silently approached the Zarathos. As they neared the flagship, They could see the massive ship's defenses. They had expected a tough fight, but they were prepared. They had worked for this moment their entire lives. "We're in position," Rhea said, her voice calm despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. "This is it." The team exited the shuttle and made their way toward the flagship's docking bay. They had trained for months to infiltrate the Zarathos, and now they had to execute their plan flawlessly. They knew the ship's corridors like the back of their hands, thanks to Leo's hacking team, who had managed to map the flagship's interior. As they moved through the darkened halls, their weapons drawn, every step echoed through the silent corridors. The tension was palpable. One wrong move, and they would be detected. But the team moved like shadows, their experience and discipline guiding them forward. They finally reached the control center of the Zarathos, the heart of the ship. Rhea motioned for Marco and the others to take positions. The doors to the control room opened with a soft hiss, revealing Zorak and his officers. "Ready?" Rhea whispered. Marco nodded. "Always." With precision, the team rushed forward. They incapacitated the guards and moved quickly to disable the command systems. Rhea focused on the central control panel, her fingers flying over the controls. She could feel the heat of the moment. They were so close, but the pressure was immense. "Zorak, your empire ends here," Rhea muttered under her breath as she pressed the final button. The Zarathos shuddered, its power systems going offline. It was done. As the team made their escape, the Zarathos began to fall apart, its command structure collapsing. The rest of the fleet was now without direction, and the tide of the battle shifted once again. The Zarathos had fallen. The heart of the Xalorian fleet was now nothing more than a broken husk drifting in space. The rebellion that had started with a handful of brave souls was now a resounding victory for Earth. But the war was not yet over. The remaining Xalorian forces, though scattered, still posed a significant threat. The victory over the flagship had been monumental, but the fight for Earth's future was still ongoing. General Sarah Bennett stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the battle unfolding before her. The Xalorian ships that had once been so powerful were now leaderless and disorganized. They were vulnerable. The final push was now within reach. "Prepare the final assault," Bennett said, her voice resolute. "We end this today." The commanders around her nodded in agreement. After months of hardship and sacrifice, Earth was on the verge of reclaiming its future. The alliance between nations, once divided by old grudges and conflicts, had now become a united force, stronger than any one empire could ever imagine. The fleet was ready. Earth's forces, fueled by the knowledge that victory was within their grasp, launched their final wave of attacks. The Xalorians, without their central command, had no way to coordinate their defense. They fought back with everything they had left, but it was clear their will to fight had broken. The humans had proven that they were not a species to be crushed. On the surface of Earth, people gathered in the streets, watching the skies in anticipation. The world had been transformed by this war. Cities that had once been filled with fear now echoed with hope. Families, soldiers, civilians, all had come together to face the greatest threat humanity had ever known. And now, it seemed the light of a new day was finally breaking through. Captain Rhea Adams stood at the edge of a battlefield, watching as Earth's forces pushed forward. Her heart was full of pride, but there was still a sense of caution. The battle was nearing its end, but the consequences of their success hadn't fully hit her yet. She had led her team through countless struggles, and now she stood on the cusp of victory. "It's almost over," Marco said, his voice steady beside her. Rhea looked at him and smiled, though it was a bittersweet smile. "We've lost so much. So many people have given everything for this moment, but it will be worth it." Rhea's team had fought hard, and now they were reaping the rewards of their sacrifices. The war had taken its toll, and Earth would forever carry the scars of what had been lost. But there was hope now, and that hope would guide the world into a brighter future. "We'll rebuild," Rhea said, more to herself than to Marco. We'll rebuild a world that's stronger than before. Back in space, the last of the Silurian ships were being dismantled, their forces crumbling as Earth's fleet overwhelmed them. The Resistance had fought not only for survival, but for something greater, the right to decide their own future. Zorak, the Silurian commander, had been captured. The Empire's leadership was in disarray, and their remaining forces were now surrendering. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had defeated the Silurian Empire, the most powerful force in the galaxy. General Bennett stood at the war room table, staring at the tactical map. It was over. The Silurians had been driven from Earth's skies, and the future of humanity was now in their hands. But she knew that this victory wasn't just about military success. It was about something deeper, the resilience of the human spirit. "We've done it," she said softly, as if to herself. "We've shown them that we will not be slaves. We will not be crushed." The war was over, but the true challenge had just begun. Earth now had the opportunity to rebuild, to forge a new path forward. The coalition of nations that had fought together would have to remain united if they were to overcome the challenges ahead. There would be no more division, no more old rivalries. Earth had faced the darkness, and now it was time to walk into the light. As the humans celebrated their hard-won victory, the skies above Earth began to clear. The first rays of a new dawn broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the world. It was a symbol of what they had accomplished, a new beginning. Rhea Adams looked out across the battlefield, her thoughts on the future. The war had taken everything from them, but it had also given them something more important, the chance to create a world where they could live in peace. "We've won," Rhea whispered, her heart full. "And we will never kneel." As Earth's people celebrated their victory, they knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, and the scars of the war would take time to heal. But they were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for a future they would shape with their own hands. The Silurian Empire was gone, and in its place, humanity had proven that they would never be defeated. They had refused to kneel, and now the stars themselves seemed to bow to their strength. The Earth had fought, had bled, and had risen. And now, the galaxy would remember the day that humanity stood up and refused to be conquered.